Hey man, what is going on? Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Cheers. What are you drinking, dude?
Oh, I'm drinking some. Actually, it's called Brewdog Elvis juice here.
Oh man,
Yeah, it's a what is
I know
it?
I've heard of them. Don't they make like 10% everything?
I think so. Yeah, it's pretty frou-frou. It's grapefruit infused IPA with natural citrus flavors.
I mean, that sounds great. I actually brought this down so we can do a toast together.
Oh, cool.
It's like,
Awesome. Great
yeah,
minds.
man.
Like that is awesome.
I did when I did a chat with David, or does he go by Dave?
Yeah.
He I was drinking maybe the same thing, and he's like, "Oh, what are you drinking there?" I think I caught him off guard by like drinking and chatting, but like
Yeah.
that's that's what I like to do.
Right. I like to
Why
do
not, right?
things. Yeah, exactly. I'm on board 100%. And man, yeah, he told me that your video and audio quality is excellent, and he wasn't
Well,
lying.
this I didn't have this camera last time, but I like it. Looks damn awesome, right?
Yes, it does.
Um, and I have it, so I was like, might as well. There's another camera I have here that's just of like standard webcam, but like this one I already have, so it's like, figure I got the tools, might as well like make it as good as it can be, you know?
Definitely.
Yeah,
And yeah, the quality is just stunning. I mean, yeah, I'm on my MacBook, and it's all granular looking, and obviously I
yeah.
have crap headphones, but
It's like whatever. Who cares? This camera is so expensive that like there's no way I would have been able to justify it unless I like made money from it. So
right.
I basically have it for work, and it's kind of work, but I don't really feel like it's work. But anyways, like I get to use it for stuff like this, which is totally amazing. The pregnancy stuff, like we've been going through so much stuff, but I had a beer for the first time in a while because this sucked, but our gas went out for a couple days here, and it's winter in Chicago, so it's kind of cold, and so I like begged a friend, can I come over and just like use your shower and maybe do some laundry for this kid that makes like 10 loads of laundry a day. So I went over there and they were so nice, like just hooked me up, like my friend's wife like put a nice candle in the bathroom, and like everything was like cleaned for me. It's like, you didn't have to do all this, and she gave me a shower beer to have. So I hadn't had a beer in a while. I was like, oh, this is pretty good. I remember this.
Oh man, that sounds amazing. It's good to have good friends, isn't it?
So yeah, you're right. Friends are
Wow.
the best, and
Yes,
I'm lucky to have good friends. So
absolutely. Absolutely. And congratulations, by the way. I mean, I know it's tough times right now, but congratulations on
oh,
becoming a
thanks, and
father,
we'll
by the way.
cheers to that.
Prost.
Hmm. The old or the new pandemic toast.
Yeah, exactly. Over a Zoom call.
Right.
I have to say it's refreshing to see a human face without a mask on. So that's
Right.
good. It's good to see your smile and your teeth
I've
and
been
stuff.
I've been wearing a mask and going into hospital so much that I've had like seemingly like permanent like crease marks from and probably the last time anybody had seen me, as I had like a pretty big beard, and I was wearing the mask so much, and I was wearing it at work anyways, but it was becoming such a problem that I was just like, and I got all mad and like just
Yeah.
shaved everything off and looked like a child and got really bummed out about myself. But it's grown. It's, this is a good week here. So
Okay.
I don't know, it's not that bad now, but I was super pissed.
Um,
I'm not used to myself without facial hair. So
you did have a rockin' beard for a while there, and a
yeah,
rockin' like a mane going on too. So
I kind of got like this mullet thing.
yeah. Oh, cool.
And the reason I was kind of late here is I had to take a shower and like look pretty for you.
Oh, okay,
But
cool. Well, thank
yeah, I got a sweet mullet now.
you, dude. That's awesome. Bringing it back.
You know what? Figure the kids are doing it, so might
That's
as well try to be something I'm not.
yeah. You do have a glorious mane and a glorious beard on the way back. So
Oh,
cheers to
thank
that.
you. I don't know. I might keep it kind of trimmed up until I actually just got my COVID vaccine yesterday.
Okay.
So the first one, but like, eventually it might be a year or whatever, but eventually it'd be nice to have a beard again and like not worry about the mask. Like the other thing is like when you have a huge beard, it's like that mask just like smushes it, and then I'll do videos like this for at work, and I'll take the mask off, and I just have this weird like swooshed out beard, so it's problematic.
Right.
So the beard doesn't really mesh well with coronavirus,
I could
unfortunately.
Yeah, I could see that. And you know what? Whenever I try to grow a beard, I get about 14 days in, and it's thick. And then on the 14th day, I kid you not, I have to shave it because it drives me nuts because I literally can't sleep. It's like I'm sleeping on cactus needles.
Oh
If that
gosh.
makes sense. Yeah, it's so painful, and I can't quit touching it. And
Yeah.
it becomes red and irritated, and I just end up caving and shaving it off. People tell me to push through that, but I've never been able to push through that phase.
It's true though. But yeah, you don't need a beard. And
Right.
honestly, like masks kind of don't work like
Right.
technically with one. So it's
Right.
I didn't get sick or anything, so maybe I got lucky, but
It was
apparently
the
you're
beard.
not supposed to do it.
Yeah. I'm thinking it was the beard that saved you, not the mask.
Just filtering. Just my beard is just full of virus.
Your follicles both trap and kill the virus before it can make its way into your.
It's powerful.
The power of the beard.
Right.
I'm excited. This is a Friday night because this is the
Nice.
first time I'm going to use my Grant Stone.
Yeah, I got a couple of those.
Yeah, for sure. I saw your videos on Grant Stone. Absolutely. So I'm going to open. There we go.
Is that a fat tire or
Is Voodoo Ranger IPA right here.
nice.
I don't know if Voodoo Ranger. There. I'm into IPAs, I guess, when I do drink beer.
Me too. Yep.
Okay, cool.
For
Right
sure.
on.
That brewery, New Belgium, actually the guy I bought this house from was like a salesperson for them. But there's a park near my house here, and every year they have a festival that the brewery puts on called Tour de Fat, I think. And they just like have a huge party in the park right across the street from me. It's pretty cool.
Oh, no kidding. Oh man, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, I guess they used to have like there's this comedian guy Reggie Watts that was there a couple of years ago, but
Okay.
they get some like legit people showing up there. It's kind of fun.
Oh, I'm sure. That sounds like quite the neighborhood party.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, man, I have to say this is great having you on because I've followed you for probably a couple years now, and right here I have 3 of your wallets.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah.
Got a couple Frank the Enforcers.
Yes, 2 Frank the Enforcers, which I love. I'm all about the minimalist wallets.
Yep.
This one's in garnet shell.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, love it. This one's in black marbled shell Cordovan. And I was extra excited because this one was featured in your in one of your videos.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
That's cool.
Yeah.
You know what? That's one thing I miss about not being in the shop is and even when I was there, it's pretty big challenge to do an hour like I guess that they're more like 15 minutes to 20-minute videos like every day. But I like really tried to push myself to do like document basically everything we ship out, and I've fallen off the wagon a bit, but it's such a fun experience to like you experience to see the thing you're going to get before you get it. And actually there's a bass guitar behind me that I ordered from this company that kind of does a similar thing to me, where it's like, although they're a little bit more semi-custom only, like there's no stock items, but they would show you the thing that you spec'd out, 8 weeks from when you order it. They would put up a photo of all the stuff, and it was so much fun to like refresh their page every day and then anticipate it, like, okay, when am I going to see it? And then you see it and you're like, oh my God, that's so awesome. I know it's coming now. It's just like this really special experience of being able to like see the thing before you get it. So I was trying to pull the experience I had from that guitar into what we do. And it's pretty hard. Like, if we're shipping out, sometimes we're shipping out 70 things in a day. And I don't know if people really want to sit through like an hour-long video. Like I can do it because I love, like, I've been doing those videos for a year. And I still feel like, I know I repeat myself, but I still get this like excitement from looking at every piece and just feeling it and sort of experiencing it. So I don't get bored of it, but I sometimes worry that doing too much of that might get a little stale. So I'm trying to do like what we're doing right now. I wanted to start doing like a live stream with this higher quality camera, and do like live sessions. And they wouldn't have to take hours, but we could show you your wallet every day in a half hour, and then I don't have to like go edit a video and upload it. It's kind of a process. But yeah, like that was one of the reasons I picked up this camera and this setup I have right now to do stuff like that. And then my kid came a little early, so we'll have to get back to that when I'm back in the shop, which will be who knows when that's going to be. I'm trying to do the like be a good parent kind of thing, and be a good partner before I commit going back to work. So yeah, I mean it's still such a fun thing for me to look at the leather, and I've been looking at it for 15 years. So that's that. I think it comes across my excitement for it, and I think people. I mean, I get a lot of feedback about myself being excited about leather, so I'm glad that it comes across, and the whole goal of what I'm doing is to try to share that experience that I feel for the material with everybody and to help them make a good choice. I see you've got a bunch of really cool pairs of boots behind you, and yeah, yeah, like, I mean, it looks like a lot of great stuff in different colors. I mean, yeah. So it's like, how do I know, being a person on the internet, and like, there's not like in Chicago, there's no Alden store. You can't just like go check out all the Aldens. So the real question is how do you translate that experience of all these different sensory characteristics that the leather have? How do you translate that information across a camera? And the way I figured was the best was to get as high quality video as I could and just like nerd out about it and just tell people what I see. And that's just the leather. But what I suck at and what I love about you and some of the people that you guys have been chatting with on those live, not live chats, but the real boot talks. What I love about that is how you're sharing your experience with the things that you've picked up, not necessarily saying like, hey, this is the best. It's more like, this is what I see. And I appreciate that so much, because we just need people that aren't trying to sell you stuff, and just give a real firsthand experience with the product, so somebody can make a good choice. And again, like, it's so hard because there's so many different brands to love, and the stuff's expensive, and it's just the biggest challenge to me. It all comes down to fit, and I wonder if maybe you have a resource for me to use that maybe we can share with the rest of the world. Is there like hey, I wear a 11 and a Nike running shoe, and a Brannick device is 10 and a half. Here's where you fit in, like, all these different styles and lasts and brands. Is there something like that you're aware of?
No, there's not. And actually, that's why I started recently doing sizing videos. So what I'll do is I'll take a brand, or I'll take a last, and I'll compare that last to other boots that I have, to sort of document that for posterity, so that when people have questions about sizing, they can sort of reference that, and it'll ease their mind. Because actually talking to Dave, because I talked to Dave a lot back and forth, and we developed the term fit anxiety. Fit anxiety is the anxiety you feel when you're trying out a new boot brand and you don't know how you want to size.
Right.
So that's the whole goal, is to sort of alleviate some of that fit anxiety, because I've sized wrong myself, and it's frustrating. Like you said, this stuff is expensive, and you want to get it right because you're spending your hard-earned money on this stuff, and you intend to have it for many years because they're heirloom quality pieces. And the worst thing is to have to let something go because you sized wrong. So yeah, so that's kind of why I do those sizing videos. And but to answer your question though, outside of that, no, there's not really a good resource aside from like those online things that I don't trust, like, oh, enter your information into our fit guide, and
then they spam you with a million emails or something.
Yeah, exactly. There's no way that information's accurate anyway. So
I mean, it could. Maybe somebody helpful watching this I suppose there's two problems, is like just creating the database and then having the inputted information be trustworthy. Because like, honestly, like I was actually taking my, I have some Roy boots that I took out for a spin today. It was like the first not winter boot I wore in a while. And I was like, man, these are so comfortable.
Really?
But honestly, they're probably like a half size too small for me, but they fit great now.
Hmm.
So like me saying to somebody like, hey, like it's hard because the other example would be VIBERGs I have. They're like the most uncomfortable things I've ever worn for like 3 months. And now they're by far the most. So it's hard to like, it's hard to share that caveat and like the nuance in the sizing in like a number 10. Like it's hard to just say like get a 10 if you wear a 10 Nike, you know what I mean? So I think you'd have to have like a really, really knowledgeable person that has worn a crap ton of different footwear to make that database.
That's definitely true, and that's why like I in my sizing videos I put the boots next to each other so you could kind of see, and I show the length and I try to show the width. But actually, real quick, I want to show you. You brought up the Roy boot. I just got my boots resold today by my cobbler, so I'll show you that real quick.
Yeah, man. Do you put? Are they crepe still?
No, they're now on the leather sole. I don't know.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, these are.
Are those suede?
No, they're reverse tobacco chamois. They're the oiled rough out.
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah,
those look great.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. My cobbler Sonny. I'm not kidding. We just recorded a resole video today that I'll be editing and getting out hopefully in a week or so. But yeah, I'm glad you brought those up because this was one of probably my 5th pair of Aldens. Just love the Roy boot, so I'm glad to know a fellow Roy boot owner.
Well, mine are. This is bringing up an interesting topic with a buddy of yours. Is mine are in Chrome Excel, and I'm very, very biased. So I like to sort of, when I explain my leather experience with people, it's very much like from a Horween like first perspective, which is not necessarily right. It's like that's just my experience, and I like it an awful lot, and it makes me think I think my bias makes me think that some things are worse than they actually are. So having said that, I know your buddy, I remember commenting on, I think it's vintage style, almost vintage style. Is that the channel?
Yeah, Jake almost vintage style. Yeah.
I saw one of his videos about, I think he was a little clickbaity in the title, which is great. I love it. It said, Chrome Excel, it's the most overrated thing I've ever seen, or question mark. Like, and I hopped in there. I was like, hey, you know, like, that's cool. Like, not everything's for everybody. And I actually, and he and I maybe should do a chat sometime too, but I mentioned a comment like, hey, you know, you mentioned all the things that you don't like, but you kind of missed like the big things. And for me with the Roy boot, when I was talking about the sizing, is I think they're technically like too small for me. Like the side of my foot sort of sticks out over the welt a little bit. But I feel like the Chrome Excel is almost like you want that a little bit. Like maybe it doesn't look correct, but it's so comfortable. Mm-hmm. And I commented there, you know, he was saying, you know, the Chrome Excel, like, I don't see a reason to buy it, but you know, there's a reason that leather has been a standard for 100+ years. It's super comfortable. It's fairly versatile. You know, it's got a really crazy history through 2 world wars. So you can use it in all sorts of stuff. But it's at the end of the day, like, I think the number one thing is like fit, like we're talking about, but also, you know, do you like the way it looks? You know, if you don't like it, I'm not going to tell you that you're wrong. It's just, that's not for you, man. And that's cool. Like that's why there's different tanneries, and that's why Horween literally makes an infinite amount of different leathers. So there's something for everybody. I don't think it needs to be this like battle. And I'm never about to tell somebody like they're wrong, because they're not. It's purely subjective. And I think the other levels in there that are perhaps less subjective are like, is it going to fall apart? And how's it going to wear in? So I think by somebody like you explaining your experience with, you know, how did your Chrome Excel wear in? It's kind of notorious for sometimes having a loose sort of junky break. And sometimes it's absolutely perfect. The long story short there is it really depends on the bootmaker or the shoemaker. Are they doing a good job cutting their patterns into proper sections of the hide? Because it's not like you're cutting fabric. It's not the same everywhere. The fibers actually move in different directions depending on what section of the skin you're at. So if you're trying to cut your upper from like the belly or the neck of the animal, you're going to get more looseness. And that's why I respect, and surprisingly so, respect somebody like Grant Stone. If you take a look at, I mean, I only got a couple pairs, but every single pair that I've seen online, and the few pairs that he brought into my shop a year ago when he came down for an interview right before the pandemic, man.
I watched
All
that
the
5 times.
all the stuff that he bring, and you were one of the comments, if I remember correctly. You had one of the comments I got to ask him about. But all the stuff that they cut, or excuse me, all the product that I see was cut so properly, and it's so hard for me to convey the level of experience that is required to properly cut chrome excel, and it shocks me very much that it's being done in China. So that level of knowledge that whoever's cutting over there is very high, and it's completely shocking because I'm seeing some stuff made in the United States that's not cut as well, and that's
right.
There's a longer story there too. It's it's a lot more wasteful and more expensive to not cut everything, but you're going to get a better product by leaving some on the table, And I think at the end of the day, a brand is going to have a better reputation and they're going to sell more in the long run by just making it right the first time. So there's some brands that have got a little bigger and maybe have been acquired by larger companies and they're trying to maximize for profit. And you see that. And it's a little unfortunate. But some people don't get it, though. Some people see the looseness and don't care. And then there's dorks like you and me that see it and get pissed. Although I'll see it and honestly, I don't really care. Like, I'm not so much of a snob. I want something that's comfortable and like feels good when I walk around and doesn't look like crap. I don't know. I don't really care. But there are people that are really big on the break of the leather where the toe flexes and you see that delamination and pebbling and sort of creasing where the toe meets like the body of your foot.
Yeah, that's true. And these are my Grant Stone diesel boots in crimson XL. And sorry, my camera really sucks. But yeah, you're right. Like the way Wyatt articulates it, he's so right. Like he says at his factory they cut the chrome excel correctly as to create like the ideal boot out of that, whereas not all makers do that. So yeah, for example, I have some Alden tanker boots in navy chrome excel that have a lot of loose grain actually.
Yeah. On the upper or on like the quarter pant, like the inside quarter or the backstay?
It is, yeah, it's on the quarter. I don't know if you can see it.
See, that makes me less mad. Although that one's pretty loose.
Yeah.
Like I'd rather have them cut it there than like where the toe is.
Right. Yeah. On the toe there's no loose grain. The toe is pretty good. It's got.
I kind of give that like maybe a pass unless it's like super pipey on the side.
Yeah. On this side in particular, I don't know if you could see. I'll overlay a picture, but you could kind of see that there's.
Yeah, it's a little loose.
Yeah, a lot of ripples going on there.
Mm-hmm.
So, but part of me is glad that I got to experience, some loose grain, so I didn't know what it is, because I never worked at a tannery, so I don't have like firsthand knowledge. So I like to like at least get to experience some of what people might complain about. That way I know better, So.
Do you have any of that Badalassi stuff around?
Oh, I do. Let's see. Actually, not down here.
That's all right.
It's upstairs.
The only thing when Wyatt was in, and you saw the interview a few times,
yes.
He was really, really into that, and I actually was impressed with how nicely it polished up. Mm-hmm. And that leather, what's your experience like with it? Because I felt like the break was kind of poor. Like it's a veg, so it kind of, to me, it has sort of like a veg break, which is again like not better or worse. It's just a little bit of a different vibe. It's a little bit more casual in the same way that like the Horween veg, like the Dublin and stuff, is a little bit more casual of a vibe. Are you seeing that sort of break on the Badalassi?
Yeah, I'd say so. And I think Truman, they told me that they don't run Badalassi because it's actually they weren't impressed with something, and I think that might be what you're talking about, the break, or maybe it was too thick or something. I forget. But yeah, I think they're patinating pretty nicely in my opinion. And it is just completely different from a Chrome Excel. Yeah,
Yeah.
I wish I had them down here. I actually have my jacket made out of Badalassi really close. I could grab that.
Nice, man. How do you like that? Is it a little bit more mellow of a temper, or is it kind of firm like that? The stuff that Grantstone uses.
It's here. This is
Oh, the luster looks great.
yeah, this is called Russet Badalassi. I don't know how well it's coming through on the camera there, but
It looks really. It almost has like a wet look to it,
yeah,
which I like. Does it have a little bit? I see it even in the low quality. It kind of has like a sugary break where it's not pipey and loose, but it looks like, to me, it looks like the finish layer, like the top coat, sort of finely separating out. And it looks like you pour a little bit of sugar like into the palm of your hand. I
right.
kind of like that on a jacket, to be honest.
Yes, I think it looks really good. Yeah.
Is it light or heavy, like mass wise?
Oh, it's heavy. It's heavy.
Yeah.
It's not light like a suede or a kudu or a moose. It's quite heavy.
Do you like a heavy in mass jacket? I'm trying to distinguish between thickness.
Yeah.
Or would you prefer like a little bit of a lighter?
Yeah, I prefer the heaviness. Like Jake at Almost Vintage Style says, he likes to feel bulletproof when he's wearing his jacket, and that's how I.
I like that. Okay. I've never felt like I was cool enough to pull it off. so I actually made a few jackets at one point in time. But like I never got excited about it because it was just like wasn't inherently me, and we were like selling too much other stuff. But yeah, like I when I see a Chrome Excel jacket, for example, from somebody like Arrow, I'm like, oh my God, that's crazy. Or even Shot. It's like so cool looking. And then I pick it up and put it on. It's like, man, it's like wearing a ton of bricks.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I've never worn it for an extended period of time, but I get the sense that it might be uncomfortable, but maybe not.
Yeah, they're so heavy, and yes, they are kind of stuffy. And I have one in natural Chrome Excel. It's natural Chrome Excel horsehide, very thick, and it smells like horse. You know, if I'm sitting in it for a long time, like my body heat sort of heats it up and cooks it a little bit, and you start to smell the horse, and it's actually kind of unpleasant. It gets past that initial really good Horween smell, and it gets into like the actual hide of the animal, and it's like, oh, this isn't actually all.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it's extremely heavy. It's extremely stuffy. So unless it's really cold outside, I don't wear it. Like if it's gonna be like a mild temperature, I can't wear it because I'll overheat in the thing, because it is like wearing it's like wearing body armor. It's very heavy. So
you know, and knowing what goes into that specific leather, I know what you're talking about with the smells. You're literally heating up like waxes and oils and greases, so you're kind of activating that like in a sense that like a candle would be activated. You know,
right? Exactly. Yeah, and that's kind of what I wanted to ask you about, because so like your individual journey. So you started out working at Horween, at the Horween Tannery. How long were you there for?
Well, I was there for 14 years,
wow,
roughly. And I grew up with Nick Horween. We went to middle school together, and we were total dorks together. Like looking back, it's like, oh my God, we're such idiots. Just all the stupid crap we did, which I have a feeling is like not aligned with what most people did. But you know, that was the relationship I had with Nick.
Yeah.
And you know, we both went off to college. I moved out to California, and he went to Vermont, and then he eventually moved to New York, and I was living in California, and I moved back to Chicago while Nick was still away in New York. And Nick's actually, Nick Horween's a very accomplished chef. He went to culinary school. He went to Le Cordon Bleu in New York City, and ended up working some, he would do like private, like fancy catering for like individuals. So anyways, he ran a business there, and I was working at his with his dad, and I ended up getting the gig there because I just moved back to Chicago from California, and I super poor, didn't have a job, and I've always been friendly with the Horweens, and Skip actually mentioned to me, he said, Natalie, Skip's daughter, is having a graduation. Why don't you come down and help me cook, and we can hang out? And so I went over there, and we like had a little grill out for Natalie and her friends and on their graduation. And Skip said, we just had a fire recently at the tannery. I'm like, oh my God, that's crazy. He's like, yeah, and the real problem is we're such an old company that all of the formulas are on paper. I'm like, oh man, that could have been pretty bad. So he's like, yeah, we got pretty lucky. We're talking about tanning formulas and finishing formulas. And he says to me, and I've always been pretty nerdy and like into computers and stuff. And he said, I know that you're pretty good with computers. Why don't you come down? And I think he was envisioning somebody like to type it into Word or something like that. So I said, sure. He's like, why don't you work here for the summer and type in all the formulas and get the hell out? But so I showed up and I started working with the tanner, Chris Kolblinger, entering in all his formulations. And I would put it into an Excel spreadsheet. And I was looking at this thinking like, why don't we make this variable? Because what was happening was every time Chris Kolblinger would tan a mill of leather, he would have to weigh out the material of hides that he's putting into a drum, and then make fractionally like each ingredient that would go in based on that stock weight. And he would manually calculate those. And I saw him doing that one day. So what do you do? Like, what's going on here? And he's like, well, like it's not always a 2,000 pounds. Sometimes it's 1,500 or 728 or whatever it is. And I said, well, I have all this in Excel, and basically I made them like variable formulas so they could save the tanner time. And I think they saw how I took that, and what ended up happening was that summer job ended up lasting over 14 years. So working there was amazing, and I fell in love with the leather. I think it was the experience of being able to work with somebody like Skip Horween every day, and his passion is also contagious. I think that's probably where I'm getting a lot of it from. And if you ever have a chance to watch a video with Skip in it, he's incredible. He's just amazing stories and such a good storyteller. Although he hates him, he'll never watch himself ever. He hates it. So anyways, I think a lot of that rubbed off on me. And as I was working there, fell in love with leather. I didn't realize before working there that leather wasn't just like a singular item. Like, to be honest with you, before I worked there, I thought leather was brown, and I thought it was one thing and it was just called leather. But it turns out you can make an infinite amount of leathers with different materials that you can tan into it, and an infinite amount of colors. So that experience was eye-opening. And then on top of that, the way that I noticed that the leather aged was like also quite intoxicating for me. And what I ended up doing was I would cut little pieces off the edge of whatever leather I saw at the time, and I would put in my pocket just to see what's it going to do. And I didn't realize it at the time, but that I think that was sort of the start of me making wallets and things that you put and that you carry around with you. But really, that's sort of where it started. My business partner, Dan, at the same time that I was going through this, like put stuff in my pocket, I was also learning hand sewing and sort of crafting in my living room. And he was doing the same thing, and we didn't know about it. And one day we both sort of mentioned to each other, like, hey, you want to see this thing I've been making? And I said, yeah, sure. And he made a purse for his wife. He came in and showed it to me. I was like, man, that's really cool. Let me show you what I did. And I think at that moment we were like, man, maybe we should do a little something on the side. And that's how Ashland Leather started. And that was 10 years ago now, which is also really crazy to think about. So I'd been working the two jobs for 8.5 years. And a couple of years ago, I was so scared to bring up the thought of parting ways with Horween. And I still love everybody there, and we have like such a great relationship. But I mentioned to Skip, I've been thinking about this for a bit. I don't want to harm the tannery because I was doing stuff for them. So I mentioned this concept for me to take Ashland full time, and he was so supportive. And I gave him offered him a huge runway. I said, look, whatever time you want me, like I'm gonna stay here. And he was supportive to the point where like he was helping me leave, to because I think he's a fan also. And it's worked out really well for both of us. You know, we buy a lot of leather from them, and I'm able to share that with a ton of people now. Like last year, we had over 1 million minutes of watch time on our YouTube channel, and we sold tens of thousands of different products. So it's been really like a wild adventure from that graduation party to you and
Yeah,
I talking today on Zoom during
right.
the pandemic. Right? It's crazy.
It is crazy. And you know what? You are the one person that I have to say is like the ambassador. I mean, I know you don't work for Horween currently, but you're really in a lot of ways the only ambassador I've ever known from Horween. Like I've been so fascinated by the tannery, and I've tried to look up interviews from like different people at the tannery, and try to get like an idea of like what a tour through the tannery would look like and things like that. And there's not much out there, but then you come along and you're like the expert because you worked there. You've got so many insights that, like, I listen to your videos and you say you feel like your content is starting to get redundant, but I learn something every time you post
Oh,
it.
nice.
Literally, like every single time I get a deeper insight into the mind of like somebody that worked at Horween. You know, it's incredible and it's fascinating, and I nerd out on it for sure. So yeah, I will say that I sort of consider you an ambassador of Horween, like the only one
Thanks.
that truly ever.
Honestly, that is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to promote them, which
Okay.
is interesting because, and Skip will point blank tell you this. He'll say to you, he says, "Look, like we're not the star here. Skip doesn't see the leather as the star. He wants to promote his brand, the people that are his customers. So he'd much rather you say, "Oh, hey, I love Alden, or I love VIBERG or Grant Stone or Rancourt or Quaddy, all these different places. He'd much Wolverine and Wilson's their biggest customer. He'd much rather you be interested in them than him. I think he's a little overly modest, and that's because of that mindset that he's had, that he's purposefully avoided. They don't advertise. They don't do any marketing. They've kind of like just played it cool. And I always felt like I said, that experience that I had where I didn't know, I thought leather was one thing. I think that sharing my like realization with people is really important, because it like helps people understand like there's a difference, and here's what to look for, and here's what I see. Let me explain to you what I'm looking at, and then you can start to think of things in a different way, and maybe pay attention to things like the break, or the feel, or the smell, or like how's it going to wear in. Like, let's research these things a little bit more. And I think a brand like Ashland has found a nice audience with people that turn out to be quite like myself, where we just want to dive deep on a singular fascinating thing. And perhaps sometimes it's more exciting to do the research and the understanding than to actually have the thing, which I don't know what that's about, but I feel that about a lot of things. It's really exciting to like find out information about like a really deep dive into, I don't know, whiskey or whatever. So I think I'm starting to cultivate a little bit of that crew right now, and I love it. And I have to tell you, other friends, a mutual friend, David of ours,
Mhm.
he's mentioned the same thing. It's just like the people that are into this happen to be by chance like the nicest people around, just want to help each other, and that's what I love. I've only been trolled one time doing a live video,
Yeah.
but everybody else is like legitimate questions. Like sometimes people say like that's stupid, and that's great. Like I never will delete that, because that's your opinion.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about. Like I think sharing like information and thoughts about a thing are really important. That's kind of what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, and you're doing a fantastic job. And you know what is so funny is hearing you talk. I hear so much of myself coming out of you, because sometimes I'm doing my YouTube channel and I'm just thinking like, what am I doing? Like, what seriously, what am I doing right now? I don't know what I'm doing actually. Like, I don't have like this big master plan, formulated. Like, I'm literally winging it every day I make a video. Honestly, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just following
Do
intuition.
any of us? Does anybody?
No, we don't.
Right.
I'm following my intuition as to where my fascinations lead me. And it sounds like you're doing literally the same thing, and you're trying to like translate that to the audience. And that's what I've always picked up from you. And you're so right that like the people in our community, it's like, it's very much a gentleman's community. Like nobody's out here to troll. Nobody's out here to get at each other. We're actually here to like listen to each other and figure this stuff out, which is what I love about it. So not only did I come into this like finding wonderful leathers and wonderful footwear and leather items that, you know, made my life better in many ways, but I've also found a community that keeps me coming back, because seriously, like the community, like the people that watch our videos, they leave the most thoughtful comments, the most insightful comments. These are people that take this stuff seriously and are interested, and they're nice, legitimately nice people, you can tell. So like you said, you know, like me personally, I don't know what I'm doing with my channel. I'm just following what fascinates me. And it's so funny, like to hear, like you're echoing some of that, not all of that, because obviously, you know, you have a business, a very successful business. I mean, this, by the way, is my favorite wallet from you. This is Amaretto Shell.
Oh, you like the Tony? Yeah.
That's the Tony the Ant. This is first off the most, it's my favorite wallet of all time.
It's interesting because on the video here, it almost looks more like a whiskey.
Yes, exactly. And that was going to lead me to another point, not to get off track, but there's an Instagram account called Don't Shine Your Shoes, and he posted recently, and I was thinking you would have like really good insight to answer this.
Let's do it.
Yeah, because he posted a picture about shell Cordovan, and he's got several colors of rare shell Cordovan, and he asked, and I'll show you the picture here, but essentially what he says is he posted a bunch of colors. There's Amaretto, Whiskey, Ravello, Color 8, and Color 8 next to each other.
Okay.
And he says that all shell fades to a, quote, a mean color, or a common color that most shells fade to. And he doesn't know why that happens. So yeah,
I got an answer for you. The answer is kind of simple and not sexy, but the stains that Horween uses on the Cordovan specifically are a little bit different. They're made with what's called an acid dye, and they tend to fade in sunlight. And you could do this experiment, which it's kind of cool. Actually, it's really cool on some colors, but you can sort of like sun bleach it, and I believe it's the acid dyes that are used in the Cordovan staining process that fade with sunlight. The other thing is like when the Cordovan is tanned in a pit, the color that I'm seeing on this guy's post, it's a little darker than like what it naturally looks like. So you might just be seeing the color fading a bit. Honestly, those all look pretty badass. I don't know which one of these would be. Maybe the bottom right one is, or the center. That's hard to know which one's a color 8. Top right, maybe.
So there's two color 8. It's the bottom center and bottom right are both color 8, and they look different. I mean,
the top right's Ravello.
Yeah,
they look different. And you know what? Here's the other kind of sad truth, but like to me, it doesn't matter. You got to realize also this stuff is handmade. Like the Cordovan is not incredibly consistent, which is, if I were to have been self-critical of my past self, is like that was one of my jobs at Horween, was to be as consistent as possible. So let me try to break this concept in general down. It's at a tannery, their main function is to turn a hide, which is infinitely variable, into the same thing every time. And doing that in the way that makes a product that we would call it saleable, right? So I could take a piece of leather, and I actually have some spare like paint in my basement here. I could like dump a bunch of paint, and it's gonna look eggshell white or whatever the hell paint I picked, and it's gonna look like that forever. But it's gonna look like paint. So there's part of there's really a zero-sum game as far as I can tell between the overall, like, in my opinion, like positive appearance of the leather, sort of more of a natural look that's going to show you a little bit more character and a little bit more depth of color, sort of like the things that like leather nerds like myself are really into. There's a balance, and it's a zero-sum balance between that awesome natural character and like consistency, because the only way that you can make something perfectly consistent that's not going to change is to paint it or like cover it in some non-leather material. And at that point, to me, it's like, why are we doing, why are we even making leather? You know, why don't we just make plastic, or why don't we make cloth or whatever it is? And you could kind of see it. An interesting example that maybe is not the best is, you look at car interiors. It's like that leather is very heavily finished, and it's because it has to be, because nobody wants their car interior to change color, and nobody wants their car interior to pick up the blue from their denim. They kind of want it just to look nice and clean all the time, and then to call it leather. It might be a little bit more comfortable in terms of performance, but that really is how everything washes out to me. You're sort of balancing this like perfect thing versus something natural, and it's a tough challenge.
That makes total sense, and thank you for those insights, because that's just fascinating, and it kind of confirms a lot of what I've sort of noticed over the years. And actually, speaking of sun fading, these are my Color 8 Shell Cordovan jumper boots from J. Crew, and
Oh man, are those from like a decade ago?
yes, literally.
I remember when they released those.
Yeah,
Oh, did you resole it too?
I did. Yeah, I had them
Those are nice.
recorded. Yeah, Brian the bootmaker did that. Yeah,
Cool, man.
roll.
Yeah, damn, those look great on the uppers too. Like how perfect that shell is.
Yes, yes, they're really nice. And I tried to sun fade these, and I don't know if you're going to be able to see this on this camera, but I was sun fading them, and I got to probably the 10th day of like intense summer sun fading, and you could maybe see it on some of the vamp here. It's sort of edging closer to color 4, maybe a little bit. Then one fateful day it rained, and it formed just the worst water spots.
Oh, really?
Yeah, especially on the cap toe. So I had my cobbler put a mirror shine on it. So he,
Oh, I was gonna say the shine looks great.
yeah, for sure.
Were you still see those spots?
Yeah, I still see
Mm.
the pigments have shifted around quite a bit in the vamp there. It's hard to see, but it is pretty splotchy. It's hard to see because of the mirror shine and the bad camera. But
And what's interesting is I don't know why that happens, because honestly, like all the shell, I've put up a video of like them making and finishing the Cordovan. They dip it in a tank of water. I mean, and the leather's got to be wet at a certain point in time for months. It's so it ought to take water. And usually when I get like a little bit of like, if I splash in a puddle and there's some like water spots, I think the best thing to do is like a damp cloth and sort of just to brush it back. I try to not put too much stuff on my leathers. But sometimes I see this like puffy look. It's almost like the water will create a puff, and you see that a lot on veg, and I don't know what it is. There's some sort of interaction. Maybe it's the acidity of whatever water that was interacting with the acidity in the leather. But that's not pleasant, and I'm not able to get those like puff looks out. But usually, like the spots I can get out with just a damp cloth. So I'm sad and surprised to hear that.
yeah, well, and you know, it's funny, those puffs that you're talking about. I noticed that because I just got the Maduro Shell Edward boots from Grant Stone, and
Yeah.
I literally stood outside, and it wasn't raining; it was misting, and I got those puffs. And
Oh no.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm not worried about it because however it's going to age, I want it to age that way. You know what I mean? But yeah, I have a good picture of it here. Yeah. It's the one on the top. I don't know if you can see too well, but
Oh geez, those are puffed and not just little dull spots.
yeah, yeah, that's where water hit, and
Oh
it
god,
just
that was was it rainwater?
no, it was literally just it was just misting out. That was it. And I wasn't out there very long. And it so and this is the new plain toe Blucher Derby that I just got for comparison. So like, yeah, this is unworn, literally fresh Maduro shell, and then this is, whoops, sorry, yeah,
No, I got you.
yeah, and then
And the
this is
missed spots.
Yeah,
Have you tried anything on that to fix it?
No, not yet, not yet. I'm not overly worried.
And it's raised, like it feels textured when you run your finger over it a little bit. Or do you recall?
Well, no, it doesn't feel raised, but it appears like it is.
Yeah, I think you could fix that with a damp cloth, honestly.
Okay, cool.
Try it. I mean, that would be the safest, easiest try.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so this chat we're having like is super important because somebody's going to get a shoe like that and going to go, what the hell? These are terrible boots. Why are you doing this to me, Grant Stone?
Right.
But, you know, maybe that's a leather problem.
Yeah, it's not Grant Stone's fault at all. It's definitely the leather. And, you know, from what I'm gathering and listening to the Stitch Down Shoecast, they mentioned recently, I think Ticho Blanco mentioned recently that shell the pigments in it shift around a lot, you know, and it doesn't retain its dye very well compared to other leathers. No, I don't know, but I mean, in my experience, yeah, I've seen that sort of happen a little bit. So
I think it's those acid dyes that I'm describing.
Yeah.
I don't know what he means by pigment shifting around, but it will fade in the sun, certainly.
Yeah.
As will most leathers, just generally speaking, unless they're like got a UV protective top coat on it. You know, I remember a couple of years ago we had there's a company called Shinola that makes pretty nice watches. They make a bunch of stuff, and they were making leather goods, and I think they still do make leather goods. They had a bag, and it was I believe it was a green Essex bag, and they had it in the window of their storefront for like a year. And they had a customer's like, whoa, what's that bag? I want that. And they said, well, that's our show and we can't sell you that, but like, let me pull you another green bag. It turns out it was really like a cobalt blue Essex that was just sun faded for 2 years. And they couldn't figure out what what happened, but that's, you know, the leather's going to change.
Right.
And honestly, like I think that's sort of just like a sad reality is like, you can't really leave stuff in the sun. The one that bums me out the most, and this happens on wallets, is and anybody that has any veg leather product, you got to be really careful about temperature. And sometimes I see customers that will show me their wallet, and you know, maybe they live in, like, the one example I'm thinking of, this person lived in like Las Vegas. And they said, hey, I'm a construction worker in Las Vegas. I beat the crap out of this wallet. It's holding up great, but like, what's this dull spot? And he showed it to me, and it sort of looked like an oval shape, like sort of like where it touched his butt in his back pocket, sort of like right there.
Yeah.
And it was a little bit dull. And what ends up happening is, like, once the veg tan leathers hit a certain temperature, I believe it's between 120 and 130 degrees Fahrenheit, and you have an extended period of time, like a couple hours at that temperature, you will cook any veg tan leather. It is not resilient to heat, which is why a leather like Chrome Excel was created, is it's quite resilient to heat. So a shoemaker can introduce some steam into their manufacturing process to last that Chrome Excel around the last with more heat. You can get a little bit of better last and use some heat and moisture. Where on a veg, it's like very delicate. You can essentially create a potato chip by applying too much temperature to any veg tan leather. So anybody that's got a piece of veg, like, don't leave it like on your dashboard, like in the sunlight in Las Vegas. Or even in your pants. Like I've done it for me. I cooked it in Chicago. It gets pretty hot. I've cooked one just because I got a hot butt.
Right. Steaming.
I got a hot butt.
That is awesome. That is so awesome. And you're right. Like, wasn't Chrome Excel used in World War II to like wrap plane engines or something like that? Like, it was.
Yeah, there's they use it in service trucks and in tanks. There's certainly more uses, but what they were using it for was seals, like motor seals. And the reason that the leather seals, they still exist today, they moved away from leather seals and moved to synthetic stuff, which is cheaper. But the reason that the old timers liked the leather seals is it wasn't like a binary sort of functionality. It like with the synthetic seal, it's either working or it's completely not working. Where a leather one sort of slowly degrades. And back then, like even when I was working at the tannery, like these guys know what the machine sounds like and they can feel it. Like the vibration might change. So you might imagine like a service truck driver in World War One, like, hey, my truck sounds a little different, or like this feels strange. Like, let's take a look. And they would notice the things before they'd break. So that's where those pieces of leather, Chrome Excel specifically, was used. In World War II, it was still used for motor seals, but they found another function for it. And you might look this up and you might have heard of this called marine field chew, which is if you take natural Chrome Excel and flip it for rough out, they were making these rough out natural Chrome Excel plain toe boots, and they would use it in northern Africa during World War II when they would get sand in the boots. They found that smooth Chrome Excel feel would more easily remove. You could just dump out the sand, as opposed to the like suede sort of flesh side of the Chrome Excel would get a little bit more embedded in there. So you saw a lot of that being used for boots in World War II.
That's fascinating. That's very fascinating to hear you talk about that. And that's what I love about leather is the history and the different applications it's been used for in history. And in fact, before we started, I was nerding out on your blog and I was reading the what was it? The thing.
Oh, I have a blog still.
Yeah.
Honestly, like that blog is sort of dead now. I should probably bail on it completely, but I've been mostly doing it on YouTube videos. But there's some like honestly like I put a lot of time into writing some of those, so I'm glad that you read it. Somebody read it.
Right. No, the best thing that you posted was something about the general. Let me
General Patton, or like not General Patton. His 100-year-old letter.
Yes, the letter. Oh, wow.
What was that guy's name?
Incredible. Yeah. Hold on. I have it up still. Yeah. General Pershing's
Pershing. Yeah.
Letter. Yes. And he was talking about back then, he was saying, we would like to request wine or dark brown butts and to pick out extra good butts as these were to make riding boots for high government officials. And it's like that right there. That's life-changing right there.
It's also so badass to read like just the lingo that they used.
Yes.
Like there's a part where like I really want to find it because he like describes the way that they look. Oh my god.
Yeah, let's see. He says these butts are to make riding boots for General Pershing. Some time ago we sold a few number 1 Cordovan butts to the secretary of Congressman Felon, a brother of a Lin shoe manufacturer who made a pair of riding boots for Colonel Sweetser.
Yeah. Apparently Sweetser was like a big deal.
Yeah. I've heard his name come up quite a bit.
And this is the next paragraph. It caught his eye, basically.
Yes, these butts are for such a distinguished gentleman. Everyone quite anxious to give him the very best.
I love that. Sweetser's aide where the colonel got the boots, and it was finally traced to I. Horween and Co. So, in as much as these butts are for such a distinguished gentleman, everyone is quite anxious to give him the very best. It's like, man, you guys like spoke or wrote incredibly 100 years ago.
They were so eloquent, the way they wrote. It's astounding, actually.
I mean, they must have had like, I wonder what it would be like to send a telegram, which that is what that is. It's a copy of a telegram. So I wonder it would be like, because they can't like, hey dude, sorry, I meant to send, like I meant to write this. Like it's kind of like a big deal to like fix something. So I wonder if they spend just so much more time like proofreading or whatever.
Probably. Yeah. I'm seeing here it was a night lettergram by the Telegram Cable Company.
Yeah. Like, I don't like, does that still exist? Probably not.
No, no, I guarantee you it does not.
And then the
But
bottom, there's the actual ad from Faulkner and Son.
yes,
For
yes,
military work, the best boots are essential. Faulkner and Son make nothing but the best and are equipping thousands of British officers with footwear. Write for descriptive booklets of boots, leggings, and spurs. Also, self measurement apparatus.
yes.
Regimented if unable to call.
Just the best advertisements back then. And oh, I see the part where I think you were talking about, they talked about the appearance. James L. Collins said, General Edwards came into our office some time ago wearing a very handsome pair of.
Yeah. Yes.
When I asked his aide where he'd gotten from the leather from, he referred me to you, which I
Right.
assume was, yeah, which was, I assume, General Pershing. So
Very handsome.
yes, and he was a handsome man.
If and when you ever get a chance to come visit us,
Yeah,
you walk in the door at Horween, and that letter is like right there. It's crazy. So they have that, and then across the hallway is every Super Bowl ball from like from until like the night to 96 or something like that. It's Wilson was I should explain. Horween makes all the NFL football leather and the NCAA football leather and all the NFL or excuse me NBA basketball leather. So like sporting good leather has been a big deal for them. And Wilson for a bunch of years, I think they stopped, which is why Horween doesn't have the panels anymore. They would make a commemorative like leather panel plaque with like a leather panel of the ball for each of the Super Bowls and would have like this team versus that team. Here was the score and the date. It's like pretty cool just to have all that old stuff. You're right. But yeah, it's like 100. That's the interesting thing about Horween is like in Chicago, we have a museum of natural history called the Field Museum. And Horween is basically a museum that is a profitable private business. It's not a museum, but
yeah, it's a
it's
museum that's still in operation, essentially.
it's wild. I mean, if you watched, I did a video this year with Skip Horween. It was about the thickness of the leather. Like, talk about like, first of all, like I made a video about like how thick is leather, and like thousands of people watched it, which is like, it's hilarious to me because it's so down the well. It's like just so deep that like what could possibly be interesting there, but it turns out like there's so much interesting stuff. And one of the things from that interview that Skip described is the splitting machines that they use, the technology hasn't really changed, so they're still using machines from like 1900 if I remember correctly, and they just sort of service them consistently and just keep it repaired. It's those things are properly maintained and they can last you forever. The other crazy thing is that I think about a lot, and every time I walk in there, I think about this, is that building was built before electricity. And back before electricity, all the stuff was sort of like steam powered. So they would have, you could look closely if you go to the alley behind the tannery, there's still railroad tracks like in the alley. And those railroad tracks weren't for trains necessarily. They were for like carts to come off of barges that were just, like a mining cart just full of coal. And these dudes would just shovel coal into their boilers that would turn a wheel, that would turn a belt to another wheel. And then I imagine a tannery or like any industrial building in the Industrial Revolution was just like this massive just network of like pulleys and belts going from floor to floor, and they would connect directly to each machine off of that one like coal powered pulley. It's pretty wild, and you can see how they've modified these old pulleys to be driven by an electric motor now. But if you ever walk in there, take a look in the ceiling, and there's old fans that you can see the belt drives for these old fans. It's literally a museum, and they don't seem too interested to like take those old things out. They just kind of leave it there, which
Yeah,
again is like, I think it's charming. It's not necessarily like maybe the best business thing, but then again, maybe it is, because it's interesting and different.
yeah,
The tannery at Horween is built in such a terrible, like modern manufacturing way. it's such an ad hoc system where they go, well, we need to, whatever machine it is, we need to split, and we're going to get a new splitting machine. Where do we put it? And they wouldn't say like, okay, where does it make most sense for like efficiency? They would say like, all right, we don't have any room. Like, where are we going to put this? So they just kind of put it like wherever they can. And that's a big problem when you have a product like Shell Cordovan that takes 6 months to make. You're going up and down and up and down and up and down. It's so inefficient. And it's sort of just an inherent problem with being in the city of Chicago with a 5-story building. Modern tanneries are 1 floor, and it's a big U shape. You start here and you end there, and you run one product, and that's it. Where Horween's, it's basically like a custom shop. The scale that they run at compared to the rest of the world. So they're not necessarily going for efficiency, which may be good, may be bad. But it's certainly a challenge and like an interesting thing to observe if you ever check it out there in person.
Well, what I like about all that you're talking about, especially the old apparatus and everything that's in place, is like it pays homage to the heritage that it has, right? I mean, it wasn't designed with efficiency in mind. It wasn't designed to be green or whatever, carbon neutral wasn't even a term until a year ago. So
although I should interrupt you, because you'd be surprised at how much. So Horween works with a company called Timberland, who has very high environmental standards, and
right
for that reason, and they work with Nike, and there's quite a high bar to pass for environmental friendliness, let's call it. Okay. So I think you'd be surprised at, and this was part of the like group I was a part of when I worked there, is they come in and they audit you for your energy usage. And this is a long story, but essentially cool. The point I'm trying to make, and we can get into that measurement quickly. The point I'm trying to make is there is technology that exists that can improve your tanning efficiency, so you can run it with less water, and you can run it with less chrome, and you can run it with less electricity. And even the drums themselves, there are more efficient drums. So the process hasn't changed, but like the science and the understanding of like the action of the pins in a drum can change it. So a quick, simple example that will represent like most of what I'm talking about. So you'd extrapolate this like 100 times over a bunch of different pieces of equipment. Instead of running a drum at like this RPM, they found out that you can actually have a slower RPM that requires less energy with just a different action inside of the drum and maybe some different chemistry to make the take up of the tanning materials penetrate into those fibers more efficiently. So there are things like that Horween has done. Essentially, they have done everything they can to, number one, follow the rules and the laws of our local and state and federal governments, but also to be as efficient as possible. And here's, to me, this is a like super, super important topic, because I don't like being wasteful either. That's why I buy a boot that I've worn for 10 years. Like, people buying this stuff aren't buying it for a season and throwing it away. And that's part of the equation that people aren't calculating and aren't accounting for. So Horween makes a leather called Shell Cordovan that is, number one, it's 10 times less of the yield of square footage compared to any other tannery. So the Cordovan, for one animal skin, you're getting between 4 and 5 square feet of leather for one skin. Whereas a steer hide, you might get 50 feet. So you're talking about 10 times difference, so a tenth of the size. But also the other hugely problematic thing is, excuse me, this bourbon's giving me the burps. The other very problematic thing is the Cordovan takes 6 months to properly produce it, right? So you're spending 6 times as long to make a tenth of the yield. So of course your efficiency is going to be terrible. But the thing that they don't pick up is, like, I've heard stories of people that say, hey, these were my great grandfather's shoes. I still wear them and I just put a new sole on them. It's like, yeah, hell yeah. Like, that's what I'm talking about. Like, you had a thing that was worn for 50 years and it's still awesome. So we've kind of created this culture in America, maybe it's just America, that is like kind of just interested in like, hey, what's the new hot, that new hotness, right? Like, give me the coolest new thing, and then all right, I'm done with that. But I think there's people like yourself and me that are more into like, I just want like one nice thing. Like, don't put a bunch of crap on it. Like, just give me like a clean, simple, nice thing that's comfortable and that's gonna look nice for a long time and not fall apart. Like, that's kind of all I'm looking for in everything. And I think there's, I think there's people coming around to that sort of mentality. I can't tell the pace of it. And something you and I might want to talk about here is there is a ebb and flow of this cycle where I think we're on the uptick of the interest for this sort of leather boots. But 10 years ago, when you bought those J. Crews, that was sort of another peak, and then we had a little bit of a drop. And it's interesting, and Skip Horween and I theorize about this a lot, is what ends up happening is certainly happened for me is, man, 10 years ago, like I bought a ton of great stuff and I was super pumped on it. And guess what? Like, I didn't need to buy anything for 10 years. So like when I come on camera and I show you all my stuff, it's like old, not new stuff, It's because I can't wear a lifetime worth of boots. Each boot has 20 to 50 years of life in it. So there's no way I'm going to use all these boots.
Right, exactly. Which is why, not to get off on a tangent, but it's why when I wake up, I put on boots. I don't take them off till it's bedtime because I want as much wear on them as possible. I don't take boots off. I live in boots. So yeah, man. But yeah, what you're saying is so true. Like, and a lot of what you're saying is like, that's the initial grab that gets me, essentially, is like, oh, this will last you your life. You can resole it as many times as needed. This is built to last. This is heirloom quality. This is heritage quality. And so yeah, that got me my first pair of Aldens, and well, the rest is history.
Right. I mean, it's also a fun thing. Like, I have a wall of guitars also. It's fun. Like,
enjoyable.
Even my wife like doesn't give me a hard time. She knows that like I love it. Right. Mm-hmm. If I feel like you got to have something just be like a total dork about, and just like have that, right? Like give yourself something to love, like whatever. Like I also like video games, like play a video, like basically I come down on this thing where it's just like, do whatever makes you happy. And if it sucks and you hate it, like why are you doing that? And you're allowed to like just be a total idiot about like I don't know how many pairs I have, but like it's certainly inappropriate. It's like it's far beyond like what I have to have,
right?
And that's okay. You're allowed to love it, right? And just looking at it, if that brings you joy, man. Like I'm looking at your shelves and I'm like, man, that looks awesome. Like I'm envious and I would want that too. It looks great.
Thank you very much. And actually, yes, and you've just made so many good points that I feel like I could take each one and go down that path with you, because I mean you're such a wealth of knowledge. But one thing that you mentioned that I do kind of want to ask you about is like working at Horween, how many different types of tasks did you have there? I assume you didn't just do one thing since you were there for 14 years. You probably were like did a lot of different stuff, I would assume. So
yeah, it's a really tough question, because in a small business, and right now, when I was working there, Horween had 150 employees, which is still not huge. Mm-hmm. Even at a company like that, you kind of do a little bit of everything. I'll tell you this, I wish I could have done more like of the actual work. Like the guys there are incredible. Like the union people working the actual jobs, like on a machine, that's a tough ass job, especially when the leather's wet. That's heavy and it's wet and you're hot. There's no AC. So I did do, I wanted to learn most of the jobs. I didn't successfully do them. But I did run some jobs in the basement there, the wet departments. And I showed up at 3 a.m. I was super tired. The leather was so heavy and wet. It was miserable. And I did it for a day, and I can't imagine people doing it for multiple days. That wasn't my job. But my job, the reason I had to do those things was to get a better understanding of, like what's going on, and appreciate those people too. Like, essentially I was not the boss there, but I was like a mini boss. Like, part of what I was trying to do was just to make sure stuff ran properly. So when you ask like what's the jobs that I did, it's kind of like a little everything that's non-union, because legally I wasn't allowed to do a union job unless it was alongside a union person. So to give you an example of that is when I was running the retanning mills, another union member had to be there working with me, so I didn't take their hours away. And it was like that for everything. It kind of sucks, just selfishly, that I couldn't like run more tasks to like do the real work. So what my job ended up turning into was, how can I take my nerdy skill set of being able to handle information and process information and create that into systems. So a lot of my tasks were to create systems that would, number one, create us the best possible product in the fastest, most on time, to fill our customers' orders, and the dates quoted. So I was sort of like an expediter. And towards the end of my career at Horween, I mostly worked with the samples and development, overseeing the finishers that would be making the new developments. I would, look at it with them, and we would talk about it and try to figure out what the salespeople and the customers are trying to accomplish. So I was like the ground level sort of go between for that, in addition to like managing and creating and running all the systems that I made and implemented at the tannery. So the systems would be like those formulations that I talked about, where I typed them in, and there would be sort of variable. I would manage an order comes in, I create that formulation, and I distribute it and route it with each order through the tannery and track it. So I created a whole system to like track a couple thousand orders at once. And like, so when a customer calls up, they want to know, or the salesperson calls up and says, hey, Timberland wants to know where's their Chrome Excel. I would type in their order number, and I go, okay, it's for plating or whatever. And I would know, okay, we got about 2 more days, schedule that out. So it's kind of that sort of operational type of job, which that's like what my I almost had a music degree, an undergrad music degree, and I ended up getting a bachelor's degree in business management. So it turned out to be like sort of what my training was. And I don't know, anybody that's younger that's going to school or like interested in going to school, if you're trying to do what I do, you don't need to go to school.
Yeah.
The number one thing I learned is just there's two things is just got to be curious, and you got to be excited to like learn new things on your own. Like a quick example is like, I didn't know how to operate a camera a couple of years ago, and now I'm making a YouTube video every day and thousands of people watch it. Right. That's something that is not easy. And if you go back and look at my early stuff, it sucks, but you get better. You figure it out, and you got to keep being excited about like challenging yourself and learning. And the second part is like, you just got to be nice. You got to think about, if you're the boss, you can't show up and go like, hey, do this. You gotta understand other people, which I was before. When I was younger, I didn't really get that, and now I've become much more considerate and like thoughtful, thinking about what it is that I'm asking of other people. It's pretty easy, right? Like, you don't ask somebody to do something you wouldn't do, and you ask them like, hey, I would like this. What do you think? You don't say like, you have to do this right now. It's kind of, it's interesting. So that's, I've had a lot of success with my team and my customers by just being very reasonable. I think, thinking about what would I want if I got a wallet and I saw that little burn mark. well, I'd be kind of bummed out about it. So like, I'm going to offer to like replace that little panel for you. I'll do that. You know,
Mhm.
there's quite simple things that you don't need a business degree for.
Right.
And certainly it didn't hurt me, but I've kind of like had a decent sense of business before business school anyways. I've kind of like always been in that mindset.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe I'm preaching the choir here, but I felt like college was kind of a waste. I kind of would have rather just kept the money.
Yeah, yeah, seriously, me too. I mean, yeah, I think everything. I think, and honestly, by sort of shadowing my cobbler recently, I can tell you, like, you don't need to go to some institution to learn how to run a business. Like this kid's doing it just by watching and applying. Like he's really amazing. He's got an amazing acumen naturally. He doesn't need to go to college to learn any sort of like business management.
I think anybody working a real job will tell you like the stuff that they learned in school is so much different than the actual job. And it's also interesting. I think it's harder in school, but less valuable. Like they're making it hard and
Mhm.
it's things that don't matter.
Right.
I mean, 80% of the time. And then you get in the real world and you're like, okay, I know about that stuff, but like doing this actual task, like I'm not really, I've never opened up a textbook to be like, what did it say about that thing? It's like, no, at least in for business. But, you
Yeah.
know, let me speak out the other side of my mouth is my wife is a nurse practitioner and she had the opposite experience. So there are more scientific types of professions that is like absolutely required. I don't necessarily know if like anybody really needs like a business degree unless like maybe you're a fancy accountant. But even then, like go to one of the big fours and like learn on the job. I mean, that's the only way to do any of this.
Right.
Um,
Right.
I tend to go off on a high horse about education a lot, and
Yeah.
it's probably going to hurt me one day. But I really feel like just go do it, do the thing you want to do, and figure it out. Because even with the degree, you're going to suck. You're going to suck. So like, might as well start like doing the real thing instead of like the fake practice game. You know,
Right.
because it doesn't. You're not going to hurt yourself either way.
Maybe there was a time where university degrees held more weight, but I feel like nowadays it's like, I
It's more of like, can you do the job? Right.
right. Exactly. Exactly.
It's more about like, can you, in terms of business, like, can you create a business that is successful and like sell some stuff and have happy customers?
Right.
I
And
mean,
that
the
point
school
is
is not going to teach you that.
no, no. That what you're talking about is an intangible skill, and that I don't know that the university can impart upon you. And it's kind of like going back to my childhood. They always used to say, you know what they call the doctor that graduated last in his class? Doctor. And it's true. The doctor that graduated with all C minuses, guess what? He's your doctor now. So
You know, it was really fun. The only, not only, but the best class I had in business school was business strategy, which was like
mhm.
the college I went to was like their capstone course. Like that was the one that was like a big deal. And the teacher was great. Actually learned a lot from that.
Yeah.
But the best part was is I was going to college at the same time as working at Horween.
Oh,
And part of this business strategy course was they had this fake they had a game. It's called a business strategy game. And you ran like a fake shoe company, which was like amazing for me. And I did really well. But it was amazing for me because like I was already like kind of doing that at my job. Um,
right. Literally.
but that I kind of I get really into, I don't know why it is, the sort of gamification type of things. Like the business strategy game I thought was really fun. I also like in my personal life now, I know it's kind of like trendy and hip now, but I honestly like reading financial statements from like public companies. Like I think I've realized that it's really stupid, but there's something about that game too. Like I don't buy a ton of stocks. Honestly, I try to buy like the index and just buy them all and like not worry about it. But I've been like endlessly fascinated about this game of like stock price and like what are their financials. So maybe I got some of that from school, but overall, whatever.
I remember that assignment specifically in school, and that was the one that I did really bad at. It was like pick 5 stocks, and 2 weeks from now we'll see who won. And like everybody else made money. I was like the only. I was terrible at picking stocks, which is why I'm like you. I just go for the general.
I just do the index. I
Yeah,
don't know. It's not exciting though. Like
right.
I won't name any specific people, but you can see it right now. Like when the pandemic started and sports kind of went away, we had a lot of degenerate friends
Yes.
that love gambling, right? And they had like nothing to gamble on, so they had to gamble on something. They picked stocks, and you see a lot of that happening now, and it's dangerous. I worry about it because I'm such a geezer now that I was old enough to live through 2009 financial crisis, and I recall being very scared. I remember driving to Horween, going to work, and there were no cars on the road.
Wow.
And now it's like it takes me a half hour to go 2 miles because there's so many cars. It was I just recall it being so bad, and knowing how bad things can get, that it worries me where people are like, hey, I'm going to drop my life savings on Tesla or whatever. It's like, man, you got to be careful because you don't know like what real shit is, right? It's like things can get pretty bad.
That's true.
You're going to want that $100,000.
Yeah. That's why we don't put all of our eggs in one basket, I would say.
Yeah. Well, but it's pretty hip right now. Like,
yeah,
I bought a share of GameStop because it was fun, but yeah, it was one share. It's but yeah, I don't know. Like I did that because the hedge fund stuff like so bothers me, man. Anyways,
I'm with you.
This is not boots, not leather.
Right, that's true. That's okay. I hear you for sure. But no, you've made so many excellent points. Not just, and that's what I love about talking boots is like you talk boots, but then you get into like solid life advice and solid epiphanies that actually affect your life in meaningful ways. So it's not just, yeah, we're talking about leather and we're talking about what we love about it, but then we come across like, we'll have epiphanies along the way that really make sense for our day.
I have a question then. So
yeah,
I've been struggling recently, and we talked about how I've got a bunch of shoes, but like my collection sort of started, I don't know, 15 years ago. And I got hyped on it really hard. And as I imagine most people do, and they have a dozen pairs of like $500, $1,000 stuff. That's a lot. Yeah. And then, the years go by and like maybe you pick up one the next year, or maybe none. It sort of peaks and then you stop. And I wonder, like, I'm looking at your collection behind you. It's like, what are you looking at getting next and why? And like, are you selling to like replace a thing, or do you ever do that sort of stuff?
That's a very good question. So to answer that most recent one, first off, I came to this realization. I've worked so hard to build up a collection. I consider myself a collector now that, no, I don't plan to sell anything unless it doesn't just straight up doesn't fit me right, which I have done. I sold off 2 or 3 pairs last year that just didn't fit me right. But aside from that, like, no, like I plan to keep all this stuff because I love it. Like I love, right. Because, today I might not realize something about this Navy Chrome XL leather that I just got from Grant Stone. It's got that real nice turquoise hue. You see a lot of green in there, which is kind of what you mentioned earlier. The green bag that was originally blue. But yeah, so like years from now, I might want to make a video about these that talks about Navy Chrome XL. So long story short, like, no, I plan to keep all this because the way I see it is I've kind of worked kind of hard to acquire some of these, and some of these I couldn't get a second time. So it's like, no, I've worked hard. I paid for these. I love them all. They all fit me. So I feel like I want to keep them so that way I could continue to produce content and continue to enjoy them. Like we're talking about earlier, like I do enjoy this stuff, and all this stuff I will wear again, even though some of these things might only get worn once a year, like I still plan to wear them again. So there's that. So yeah, I consider myself a collector now. So I don't plan to like sell any, because again, like, yeah, I feel like I've worked to build up a collection and a nice variety. So I want to sort of keep that around. And then yeah, secondly, like what's on my radar now? Well, thanks to you, marbled shell is on my radar.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I feel like that doesn't translate to footwear as nicely as like a small leather good, like wallet. But
Right.
the ones that it's tough. Like my brother actually today, my brother Matt works with me at Ashland,
Hmm.
and he said, why is it that Horween doesn't make so much denim blue shell? And I said, well, you got to realize like most of the Cordovan they make is for the footwear industry, and like it's kind of hard to pull off like a bright ass blue boot or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of it, and that's kind of how I feel about the marbled.
Hmm.
It's like, man, that's a statement. That's like a pretty strong statement.
Yes, it is. Yes, it
So
is.
who are you getting those from?
Oh, marbled shell. I don't know. I'm in the talks now with some Indonesian makers. Um,
Nice.
I was actually talking to Truman for a while. They were pretty confident they could get some, and then they let us know about a couple months ago that they're not sure with Horween right now. And then I talked to Wyatt recently, and he was considering doing a run in marbled shell, but then he broke
Nice.
my heart. He said, "Well, Dale, what would you say if I ran a marbled shell but only did it in a tassel loafer?" I said, I would literally cry. Loafers.
Oh,
So, but
he
yes,
loves Wyatt loves those loafers,
he
man.
loves loafers. Yeah, he loves loafers. He loves tassel loafers, penny loafers, and yeah, they're a great style. They are great. Part of me is glad I don't wear them because it actually, you look at my boot collection.
Do you have any shoes, or it's mostly boots?
I do have shoes. Yeah, I have probably for every boot I have. For every 4 boots I have, I probably have 1 pair of shoes. So yeah, I
Yeah.
do have some shoes. I have some plain toe bleachers, some wingtips, but I'm mostly a boot guy. I find that I'm most at home in a pair of boots. So
Yep.
yeah, for the most part, I'm always wearing boots. So, but yeah, that was gonna lead me to a question that I had for you actually, about the different Horween leathers.
Yeah.
So when I got into it, it was like it was all brown chrome excel. It was all about the chrome excel and the shell cordovan, and particularly the brown chrome excel, the natural chrome excel, the color 8 shell, the black shell. But then as I started following you, I started seeing these new things come out. So my question to you is like Horween, yes, they're a company that has been around for over 100 years doing stuff largely the same way, but they seem to be innovating a lot with a lot of these marbled
Hmm.
shells. And now I just put in for a pre-order through Pigeon Tree Crafting. I don't know if you follow
I
Isaac
don't.
Pigeon Tree Crafting. Yeah, yeah. Most of my belts are from him.
Nice.
Yes, he is doing a run through Santalum, the Indonesian maker, for a marbled boot, a marbled leather boot. I don't know if you saw this on Instagram, but I'll show you here. It's crazy.
Is it Horween? Is that black marbled?
I don't know where the leather is. It's actually not shell cordovan. It's cow hide.
Oh, I saw that somewhere. I
Yeah,
did see that.
yeah. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
that's a tough sell, man.
Yeah,
I like it. I don't know if I could pull it off though, right?
right, right, for sure. But like, I saw that and I said, Isaac's my friend, and I've been wanting some marbled boots for a while. And again, it's not marbled shell, but it looks like marbled shell. It
Sure
does.
does.
It looks like
Sure does. Yep.
marbled shell. Yeah. So my question to you is like, is this marbled leather like a new phenomenon? Um.
Um. Well, there's a bit of a controversial actual story to this, which I'll tell you.
Oh, interesting.
So I could lie to you and say like they're trying to do that,
Yeah.
which is not wasn't originally the case.
Okay.
So, um, people that have been a fan of me for a while probably would have seen that I started doing something I call like reverse cordovan for a long time, and it's because I was. So when you work at the tannery, you see so much leather, and part of the process they have the shells stacked up, getting ready for one more process. And the top shell they always flip upside down, and they'll write like, "Hey, there's 10 of these," or whatever it is on the top one, and they'd flip it upside down. And I would look at that and like, man, that looks so cool. Like those dye marks are like, it's like totally crazy. Like that's awesome, right? So I was like, screw it, let's make some wallets and flip it backwards. Was just like totally crazy because they didn't spend any thought on making that side of the shell. So that's sort of like for me, a lot of what I do at Ashland is trying to capture sort of like lightning in a bottle. Like I'm trying to create the things that are unique that you can't reproduce and like cut them into interesting spots. And so that's how I came up with the reverse shell. And that's also how we did the marbled stuff. So this is the sort of controversial part is if a Horween makes a color and it's like a custom, it typically happens with people that sometimes want to try something custom. And Horween is very reluctant to do this. But let's say Alden comes along and says, hey, Art Tarlow, the owner's son or whatever, is like getting a wedding and he really wants whatever color, orange shell. So Skip will go like, well, you're like the owner for Alden, like, all right, we're going to try it. So they'll make a couple and like try it. And let's say like during this trial process, like they're trying to match the colors and like it comes out wrong and looks bad. They don't want to throw that out. So they're trying to salvage that. And what they do is they scrape away the finish and refinish it into something darker, typically black. So that might sound controversial, but like nobody's going to be able to tell the difference. But you know, one day I came along and I see them scraping off that orange or whatever, and I go like, man, that looks pretty crazy. Like, stop. So let me buy it right now. And that's sort of how the marble started. We would just look at it and go like, that looks really interesting. And then over time, with the Horween marbled shell in specific, my business partner Dan, who still works at Horween, he directs them as to what our customers are into. So if you go back probably about 8 years ago to when we first started doing the marbled stuff, you can see it's a little less exciting. Like it's a little less contrasty. And the farther we've gone along now, with Dan's sort of direction to the people running that machine that scrapes off the finish, they're able to get it into a little bit more interesting looks. And even to the point where within the last month, I've had a conversation with Skip Horween is trying even more new concepts with the that's scraping away the finish. He wants to scrape it away, like imagine a circle, and he wants to come at it at like this angle and then come this way and then straight up this way and this. So he wants to create like this sort of like squared off like spiral look. So you're right. Like that's sort of the mentality that Skip Horween has right now, is like wanting to try new stuff and to come up with new ideas. And it's something like leather, it's very difficult. Like how do you come up with something new on a material that's so classic like leather? Like most people just want that brown chrome excel, right? But in my time working at Horween, they created a new hit, which is now known as the Essex and the Dublin leather. That didn't exist. So there's I call it fishing. Like we go fishing for concepts constantly, and 1 in 100 is going to hit, and 1 in 10,000 is going to be like a classic. So that Dublin came about because Skip Horween said to himself, like, what would happen if we tanned a steer hide of leather in the same way that we tan the shell Cordovan? And he just put it in the same tree barks as they put the shell in for 2 months in that pit, and did all the tanning, and it turned out to be Essex, and then they put some wax on it, and then it was Dublin. So they're always trying new stuff, and that's kind of how it goes. It's just winging it, like, hey, what if this? And then they try it, and then it comes up with somebody like me where it's like, okay, stop. Like that's the other thing, is like this restraint part where like who has the taste, and I'm not the most tasteful person, but like typically John Culleton, the salesperson for Horween, really is in touch with like what the shoe customers want, and he'll have a better understanding of like when to stop, because you can sort of overdo it or underdo it, and he has that sort of like tasteful knowledge to go like, all right, that's it, like done. Like don't do anything. And hopefully you wrote down all the stuff you did, because we want to do it again, which is another big leather problem. I don't know if that answers your question, if I just got way off topic, but bottom line is to try new stuff all the time.
Yeah, you did, because you personally have introduced me to more possibilities through Horween than I've ever seen before. And before we started this Zoom call, I was looking on your website and I saw that you did a private stock Tony the Ant. It is sold out, but man, it is the craziest marbled shell I've
Oh,
ever
it's
seen.
not the psychedelic. People went crazy for psychedelic shell.
Yeah.
Like I've never seen before.
Yes. And the psychedelic shell is amazing, but like this particular Tony the Ant is just incredible. It's almost got like it's not smooth. It's like got scarring on it, I want to say.
Is it the reverse UV and raw amaretto one?
No,
Oh,
no.
you're looking at Tony? The
Yeah.
marble black shell Cordovan with brand?
Yes. That's
So what you're looking at that looks like scarring is actually scars. That's a brand, and it's
okay.
a little depressing to think about because that means that this animal got hot ironed into its butt with whatever that shape is.
Oh, no kidding.
So that's like kind of a bummer, but it looks cool too, and it's just like a reality.
Yeah.
You got to realize, like in
Right.
America, like we don't eat horse, but
True.
it's pretty crazy to think that most countries other than the United States eat horse. So that was like some rancher's horse, and he had to distinguish it from somebody else's horse, and they brand it. I don't love it, especially because it ruined a piece of shell, or like ruined a piece of shell. It looks crazy. It looks like a Roche. How do you pronounce that? Rorschach test, like that splatter test, where it's like, does this look like a moth, or like it's like an interpretive sort of thing.
Yeah.
But that's when I'm talking about like tasteful cutting. Like that's one example of like, okay, like cut this in an interesting way. And something like, I've been thinking a lot about Jackson Pollock recently, where it's like, like, is it random if you capture it in like, you took something that was random and then you like took a snapshot of it. Yeah. It's like taking a photo. Like everything that's happening is in real time, and you're not necessarily like planning every single moment.
Yeah.
So a lot of these leathers I think of like as a still photography of like, we're just capturing that moment of that leather and like getting it to an interesting point, and then putting it with other colors that we think look interesting.
Right.
And
snapshot. Yeah.
The private stock stuff that we do at Ashland, I think is really special. If you look at this, like you're not going to find, and this is only, I'm looking at them right now. You're not going to find anybody that does this for like anything.
Right.
And it's hard. And the reason is because it's super hard. So to give you a little insight to like what goes into that is, this is the culmination of me collecting leathers for 10 years. And on top of that, it's like the lifetime experience of the multiple members on my team to go into my collection of leathers. And I tell them, I give them free reign. I said, make something that's exciting for you. Like, what is it? Like, pick something that's like, oh my God, that's crazy, and make it. Because if you like it and you're a nerd about leather like I am, inevitably another nerd is going to like it. So we've come up with some really incredible results with that, and like things that aren't expected. It's sort of like how when I decided to cut the reverse side of the Cordovan, it's like that's something I liked. Or when we decided to do the marbled and actually use it for a product instead of like considering it part of a rework, like that's sort of the philosophy that we've always had at Ashland, is just like trying crazy stuff. It just so happens that now that I've started doing more YouTube videos and things like that, we've created some more attention. And it's great because like people buy it, and that helps us to create more awesome stuff. The part that gets a little bit of a bummer is a lot of people get mad at me. And I don't like that. The harsh reality of it is like, there's one of these, and I'm doing a better job now of like giving everybody a heads up. So with this most recent private stock thing, the day before, I said, hey, here's a preview of everything I'm about to put up tomorrow. And I'm going to put it up at 5:00 Central Time. You'll find it on this page. Everybody has free or the same chance to get it. And even with that, I can't tell you how many. I probably got a couple dozen emails of somebody saying like, "I really want that one. Can you just like pull it for me?" And I had to say like, "No, like I want your money to do more of these, but like that's not fair." So it's still quite overwhelming, the response that we get for the private stock stuff. We did 71 items.
Wow.
And that sold out. We didn't sell them all. I think there's like 3 left, but I think most of them sold within the first hour. So that tells me that there's something there, and that tells me like we're doing something a little special that people are starting to appreciate.
You are.
And it's kind of like that private stock concept is like what you just experienced. Like you're showing me new stuff. Like that's what I'm trying to do. Like I want to show you something that you haven't seen, so you can go like, oh, that's possible. Like let me think about this a little bit more. Like, oh, I didn't know that you could do orange Essex. Like, so I'm just skimming the page here, or like that marbled shell with a lizard print. Like, damn, that's cool. Like, there's so many different things that people don't know can exist. So this turns into a very positive cycle for me, because number one, I can like do this more because people are supporting us, and I'm like, we're so thankful for everybody supporting us, because now we can do more fun stuff. But secondly, like now Horween with the psychedelic shell in specific, I shared the feedback that we were receiving on the psychedelic shell with Skip Horween, and now he knows that there's an interest in it. So now he knows to try to be able to create that again. And the long story short there is like Skip doesn't know if he can do it again. And he's quite motivated now seeing the response from this. So that's sort of the relationship that I have with Horween, is we see each other as like a testing ground to be able to put stuff out in the world, get some feedback. Like, sure, not everything's going to be a hit, but certainly it would be nice for Horween to know, like, what should I do more of, you know? And you can see that an example of like the marble shells they're doing a lot more of. They're doing a lot more of the reverse Cordovan, and you can see competitors making that that veg that you just showed me on those boots in the same style as the marble shell. So it's they're sort of like on the leading edge of like these new concepts, which is really special, especially because this is a company that started in 1905. So you're talking about a 116-year-old company that's on the leading edge of innovation for leather. Yeah, and as far as I see, and I think that's pretty cool. I mean, the fifth generation is in that building right now, and they're still on the edge. So I think it's pretty neat, special.
Yes, absolutely. And you pushing the envelope the way that you're really doing like God's work, in my opinion. Like showing me so many things I never knew were possible. And
I'm gonna keep this quote for my bio. Phil is doing God's work.
Please do, because I believe in that wholeheartedly. Nobody else on the planet Earth is doing, honestly. Like you're introducing things to leather aficionados, because I'm coming into this, it's like, oh yeah, I love Chrome Excel, I love Shell Cordovan. Well, where else can we take it? Because variety's the spice of life. People like variety, and that's what you're doing. You're pushing that envelope. And actually, just recently, I saw Mariam Tannery in Italy.
They make nice shell.
They do. Yes, they do a lot of horse rump, a lot of shell. They just released this. I don't know if you saw this. They're doing printed shell now. Look at that.
Is that a print?
Yeah.
That looks cool. It looks like a boarded texture. Here, let me give you a demo. This is a valet train Cordovan that I have.
Oh wow.
But it's got a hole in it.
Oh cool.
Which it's like a full reject.
Yeah.
So if you take a piece of leather and you like, this is the shell side here, and then this is the reverse side. If you take the grain layer, shell's like the worst example for this. But like, imagine this was a steer hide, piece of Chrome Excel, and you fold this in on itself like this. So I've got like the corner folded down, and then you sort of press down and like pull it this way.
Yeah.
So let me give you a better example. I'm folding it in half. And then if I press down on the spine here and like keep the pressure on that folded part and then sort of pull it this way, you will delaminate the inside of this in the same way that we we're perceiving that break on a toe of a shoe to be negative. That's what that pattern on the Miriam looks like. It's that sort of pebbly delamination. And a bunch of years ago, finishers, leather finishers or leather crafters would purposefully delaminate that and then sort of polish the peaks of those pebbles and then leave the valleys like a little bit lighter. So you get this interesting like two-tone effect, which is sort of what you see there. It's a boarded look. And then you may have heard the term box board. So if I board it in this direction, that's a board. If I board it in the other direction as well, it creates this sort of like checkered look. So you're boarding it in this direction, and that's a box board. You can board it at like a plus sign, but also add a diagonal to it. And you get these like crazy different textures. It's pretty, you can do so much stuff, but that technically like that delamination is what we don't like in shoes, but like also you can make it look cool too. So this is going back full circle to where it's like, what is good and what is bad? It's like, what do you, honestly, the end of the day, it's like, what do you think looks cool? And that's, if you love it, that means it's good. That's really the bottom line.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's what you're showing me, because like what you're saying is there are endless things that you can do with leather. Every time I think I understand leather, I see another thing that like totally challenges my preconceptions. Like, for example, like, yeah, I used to think it's supposed to be smooth. Well, but then you have suedes. Yeah. So here's a suede boot, you know.
That looks awesome.
Yeah.
Is that Stead?
Yes, that is Stead. Storm.
It looks pretty tight.
Yes, it is.
Stead makes really tight nap suedes,
Yes.
which is not easy to do.
Right.
It's very hard to do, actually.
Yeah, they claim it's made in the traditional methods, whatever that means. But this is Hello Suede. This is Grantstone Storm Suede Evil Boot. I just got these in, loving them so far. But yeah, and then so you've got that, but then you also have chamois, which is like a heavily oiled rough out, you know. And
yeah, it's the. I'm going to sound like a jerk for saying it in a different way, but we always pronounce it chamois. But I call the chamois, it's an oiled nubuck. And the nubuck is an important term to understand. Like if you took the grain layer of a hide and sanded it down, it will sort of give you like a tighter sueded look. That's called a nubuck. If you flip it over and use the rough outside and sand that down, that's more of like a flesh out suede. So chamois is an oiled nubuck where they took the grain side, sanded it down, and then applied some, and the case of chamois, neat's foot oil to it. So it gives it a little bit more tracking on the nap of the suede, and it also has like a much more rich feel. It's very, very rich. I like it.
It is.
But nubuck is a very specific thing. It's like it tends to be a little bit of a tighter suede as opposed to like a flesh out suede.
Right.
Although yours are flesh out chamois, which is cool. It's like a little nappier. It's like a little less tight.
Yeah, for sure. And then, well, here I have some smooth nubuck. These are the vintage indies in what's called
really
nubuck. Yes, otherwise known as smooth chamois, smooth chamois. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. So that's the chamois like grain side. That's the nubuck.
Yeah.
That's an oiled nubuck.
Okay. Yes. Because I was always confused because Leather Soul Hawaii sold these as, they call the leather vintage nubuck, and I'm like, well, vintage, that's not really the name, right? But they call it nubuck, and I thought that was interesting. Nubuck from Horween, because I didn't know Horween made nubuck. You know, I've seen nubuck on like cheaper boots, you know, but not on Horween. But
yeah, it's very. So this is the complicated part where like people can say better or worse, right? And you'll be amazed at how well that specific pair wears in. Mm-hmm. The Horween stuff in general tends to have much better like aging characteristics. So whether it's like a flesh out or a nubuck or like a full suede, they tend to age a little better on the Horween stuff, and they tend to be, in my experience, a little bit more comfortable. So I don't know how much longer we want to go here, but I get very upset by the sort of marketing spin words that have been put on leather. So you may come across these words like top grain, full grain, corrected grain, genuine leather. Yeah. And for the most part, the way that those words are used in the marketing are very, very misleading. and it's very troublesome to me. So for example, like I can make you, they say that, what do they say? They say that full grain's the best. But like, why? They don't say why.
Right.
And also, like, I can make you a great full grain, or I can make you a piece of crap full grain.
Yeah.
So it's very upsetting. Like, I don't know. You can go to Target and it says genuine leather, and I
Oh,
like Target, so it's like, who cares? Like, if like you like the way it looks, it's who cares? It's great.
right.
So, but like genuine leather, like to me, that doesn't say any information. I mean, it just says that it could be anything. It's like,
Exactly. And I've
so it
seen,
bothers me a lot knowing,
right.
I think I know too much, and it like really upsets me. So when you say like, oh, I didn't know Horween did nubuck, it's like, sure, they could do literally anything. And it could be, they could make crap too. But
Right.
like they can also make a great genuine leather. In fact, the Stead stuff, for the most part, Stead is tanning a byproduct of Horween. For, I don't know if in that specific example, but Horween will have that splitting process, the 120-year-old machine I was talking about. There's a byproduct that is left over when Horween creates a leather to the thickness that they require. There's something called a split, which is like the remnant that suede tanners will buy from Horween and turn into nice suedes. So for us, like, that split is like garbage at Horween, but for somebody else, it's like a beautiful storm kudu, right? Like it looks great.
Right.
So you can't. I try really hard to tell people to like avoid the spin words and look at more of like, do I actually like this? Like, do I think it looks cool? And the second step, I suppose the first step is fit. Second step is, does it look cool? The third step is this from somebody that's a reputable tannery and a reputable shoemaker? Is this something that's going to last me a long time? And sort of in that order, and don't worry about the marketing spin that somebody's putting on it, because it's nonsense. It's just trying to make it sound different than it really is.
Exactly. And I can tell you, I've had full grain leather. I've seen some very cheap, really crappy full grain leather, as people like to call it. So yeah, full grain, I'm with you. It's like, it's a buzz term. Doesn't necessarily tell the full story. I think the full story is difficult to capture. And like you're saying, like, what you're getting at is there's literally an infinite amount of things that you can do with the leather to treat it, the different cuts you can do, the skiving involved, or the skiving, however you pronounce it.
I pronounce it skiving. Yeah, it's thinning it down a little bit.
Yeah, thinning it down. The reverse side, which by the way, I love your reverse shell Cordovan. It's some of the most brilliant stuff I've ever seen.
Thanks.
Yeah, I love that stuff. I really want a wallet in that. But when I'm feeling like I want some, I just open this thing up and I look on the inside.
So if that's amaretto, that's actually my favorite shell color.
Yes,
I really, really like that shade. It's
it is.
super dynamic. Like, I don't know
Yes,
if you noticed, but like if you take it outside in the sun, like some angles, it's super vivid and like bright orange. And like if you just sort of tilt it, it looks like brown and red. It's
right.
it's very bizarre, and it's interesting too. And excuse me if you've already heard this, but the shell is kind of like the suedes, where if you have that nap of directionality on the suede, you can sort of like write your name in it. The shell is also very directional, which is why you see the color change. And it's directional for the same way that the suede is directional. Is those fibers are pointing one direction, just on a much smaller scale. So the way that the light hits it, reflects the light in a different way, because of those shell fibers are pointing one angle as opposed to the other.
Interesting. That is fascinating. I assumed that, but I'm happy to hear you verify that, because yeah, it's so true. Like this particular color of shell Cordovan amaretto shell, it's so brilliant. Yeah, it's like a glowing orange in certain lights. But then you turn it and it's extremely shiny, and you can't see the full depth of, like, especially the marbling. It's got some brilliant marbling on this side, but you can't see it unless you're looking at it from the correct angle.
Huh. That's
Yeah.
cool.
So yeah, I don't know if you're capturing any of the. I wish I had
I have a hard time seeing it.
Yeah, I wish I had a better camera.
I know what you're talking about, though. Yes.
Right. Yeah, I did a YouTube video on this that I did my best to capture the marbling in this. That it's so brilliant when you see it, and it's, oh god. And now it's picked up some indigo from my denim, and it's
Nice.
really just, it's one of the
On
most,
the corners and the spine, that's where it looks cool.
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah, it's really hard with that. That's actually the other reason I started doing videos is it was very challenging for me to like properly capture the color of of a shell
right.
for a wallet in just a still image. So I was doing like just a ton of pictures at different angles, which was also kind of confusing because people were like, "Well, what is it?" And the answer was always yes, it's both. So I
Right.
started doing the videos, and I think people started to go, "Oh, okay, I see it. Like it shifts and it changes. It's dynamic. It's very unique." And also, like going back to the finishing thing, is like you could ruin that quite easily just by covering it with paint.
Mhm.
Um, so I sort of see it, and I have a terrible people. My wife specifically makes fun of my quote, but I call it like it's like a wine that you can drink every day, right? It's something that is great, and then you can keep using it, and it gets better and better. And that's why you'll find the stuff that I sell, the Horween. I only sell Horween stuff. Although in this private stock, we did a non Horween leather for the first time.
Oh, really? Cool. Cool. Where'd you?
Um, I don't even know what it is. I think I bought it from the Tannery Row. It's like a natural veg.
Okay.
Um, but
Cool.
even that product, like you'll see most of the stuff that I choose is stuff that's like very aniline finish, like not much finish on it, and it's meant to develop and change,
Mhm.
which tends to be the scene that's into the stuff. Anyways, I do get people that say like, "Hey, why isn't this still garnet or whatever?"
Mhm.
I say, well, like that's part of the charm. Like it's supposed to do that, but like
Right.
some people don't get it, and like I feel bad because it's not what they're expecting. Um, but that's to me,
Right.
that's part of the leather is like this is something that's going to change and develop to your style. In the same, it's very analogous to raw denim in that way, where it's like, oh, I wore these and like I can tell that's my style because like I really wear them hard and like you can see exactly where. Like I had a when I got married, I used to have now I have this like rubber ring
Oh, cool.
uh, but I used to have like a thick ass metal ring, and
Yeah.
it would end up scratching when I was working at the tannery. It would like scratch all the leather when I would be doing my job. So what I ended up doing was taking that metal ring off, and I would put it in my front pocket, and I would get this really cool like circle of the ring on my jeans. So like, okay, now those are really mine because like I wore them that way. It kind of is special in that way, and
Yeah.
that's why I like this material as opposed to something like canvas, which is not going to really give you much character.